Terrifying Exposé, a social security worker in Veracruz uncovers a sinister, haunted truth. In the quiet town of Veracruz, Iowa, a social security worker named Sarah found herself entangled in a web of fear that turned her mundane job into a chilling nightmare. Alone in her dim office, the soft hum of fluorescent lights dulled the panic clawing at her throat. The rhythmic tapping of keys echoed against the walls, each click a reminder of the claims she meticulously processed. But tonight, the tension in the air felt heavier, a suffocating presence lurking just beyond her line of sight, a shadow creeping closer, darker than the midnight sky outside. As she stacked files, her heart raced at every creak of the old building. Glancing over her shoulder, she half expected to see La Sombra, the vengeful spirit of local legend, demanding to reclaim what was lost. She chuckled nervously, trying to dismiss the stories as folklore. Yet, deep down, the whispers of the past merged with the unease of her current reality. Unexplained claim denials and whispers around town haunted her, as familiar faces turned cold. Grocery store exchanges felt charged, filled with unspoken words and glances that chilled her to the bone. One solitary evening, while working late, Sarah stumbled upon a file that made her blood run cold. It detailed a claim from a family devastated by a house fire. Their benefits had vanished, redirected to an account she couldn't trace. Her fingers trembled as she studied the eerie notes scribbled in an unfamiliar handwriting, chilling confirmation of her worst fears. The initials, LS, haunted her. Who was this, and why were they meddling with lives, stealing hope like a thief in the night? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Sarah shared her findings with her co-workers, their fearful eyes and lips drawn tight screamed volumes. They averted their gaze, moving as if her dark discoveries were a curse they dared not touch. The friendly chatter they once shared turned into stony silence, an invisible chasm separating her from the warmth of camaraderie. Each whisper of La Sombra hung in the air like a heavy fog, thick enough to choke her. The nights grew darker, but Sarah's resolve only strengthened. She felt the walls of her office closing in. Strange noises echoed behind her, as if the very building were alive, breathing slowly, sending urgent warnings. Her son's nightmares left her feeling helpless yet fueled with a sense of protectiveness. Shadows sneaked closer to her windows, visions of something horrific stirring his fears. Still, she pressed on, desperate to uncover the truth. Objects shifted on their own, papers flew from her desk, and an icy draft seeped in, slicing through her resolve. Just as she pieced together the terrifying web of corruption and malevolence, the power flickered ominously, choking the amber glow of her desk lamp. The room plunged into darkness, filled only with a low, chilling laugh, so terrifying it felt alive. Panic clutched at her heart. She bolted upright, breath quickening, realization dawning with every flickering shadow. Something was waiting just beyond the veil, too close for comfort, and her family was in grave danger. As the darkness closed in, she understood, the answers she sought might not set her free but rather unleash a shocking truth that could tear her world apart. The darkness enveloped Sarah, whispering threats so faint, yet chilling, they wrapped around her mind like icy fingers. Heart pounding, she forced herself to breathe against the panic rising in her throat. She looked frantically for any source of light, and in that overwhelming blackness, every idle sound became a pulse of dread. The power flickered back to life, revealing the chaos of her office tossed around like the scenes of a nightmare. Papers lay strewn across the floor, the air thick with an unsettling chill. But it wasn't the disarray that caught her eye. No, it was the figure looming in the corner, the silhouette of a woman dressed in tattered black, her eyes glowing like pair of ember coals. LS, Sarah gasped, the initials burning in her mind like a brand. This was La Sombra. Why do you disturb the dead? The figure whispered, her voice a raspy echo that seemed to bounce off the walls, closing in on Sarah with each syllable. Your name is on those claims, why are you tormenting us? Sarah stumbled backward, adrenaline surging through her veins, the figure shifted, gliding across the room with an otherworldly grace, her expression impossible to read. You chase shadows, seeking truths best left buried, she said, her tone a mix of sadness and fury. The fire was no accident. The family, they lost their home, their lives, and you dare to question who steals from them? Sarah's pulse raced now, every beat matched by the low hum of the lights above. But I need to help them. People are lost, La Sombra interrupted, her eyes narrowing as if she could see right through Sarah. The fabric of this town is torn. Threads pulled by the likes of you, drawn to corruption without understanding the price. You seek the truth, but truth comes at a cost. The people who vanished, they paid, and their echoes haunt you now. Fear slithered through Sarah, tightening its grip around her heart. What did she uncover? A truth she was not prepared to handle. What do you want from me? She managed to whisper, desperation creeping into her voice. The spectral figure tilted her head, studying Sarah, her intense gaze weighing heavy. Your redemption or your ruin. You choose. Before Sarah could respond, the lights flickered again, plunging her into an engulfing darkness, and as the room spun, she felt a sharp pain too real, too immediate, like hands gripping her throat. When the glimmer returned, she found herself on the floor, her hands trembling, the file that haunted her clutched like a lifeline. The initial search had revealed the dark thread connecting the lost claims, but the stakes just skyrocketed. Suddenly, the door creaked, pulling her attention. It was ajar, revealing a figure standing outside. A familiar face, a coworker pale and shaken, eyes wide with terror. Sarah! You have to stop, it's not just claims. They are coming for you, and your child. As soon as he spoke, shadows darted behind him, flitting like dancers in moonlight, their forms twisting into shapes that made Sarah's skin crawl. Too many questions flooded her mind. How much danger was she truly in? What had she stirred? Not just me, she whispered to herself in a panic. What have I done? In that heart-stopping moment, Sarah's world fractured, revealing a truth she couldn't understand or ignore, leaving a chilling echo in her ears. She knew it was just the beginning as her gut twisted. What would she uncover next? With dread pooling deep inside her, she moved toward the door, resolute but unsure, stepping into the unknown shadows. But she couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching her every move, waiting for her next decision. What if the cost was too high? Would she be the next to vanish? Cold air washed over Sarah as she stepped through the door, her heart hammering in rhythm with the eerie silence that enveloped her. The dim hallway loomed before her, each flickering light casting moving shadows that felt alive, as if they were reaching out, waiting to ensnare her. Sarah, the whisper came from behind her. She turned quickly, but there was only darkness, thick and oppressive. It was as if the shadows had swallowed her coworker whole, and in that moment, she felt utterly alone. Panic surged through her veins. I need to get out of here, she muttered, gripping the file tighter, her nails digging into the worn edges. She felt like it was the only tangible thread left in a world spiraling into chaos. She hurried down the hallway, her breath coming in shallow gasps, the air thickening as dread clawed at her chest. Every decision weighed heavily. What if she was being followed? What if La Sombra was more than just a ghost, an apparition meant to warn her? What if she was the harbinger of something more sinister altogether? As she approached the stairs, she spotted an old photograph pinned to the wall, a faded image of the town's fire from years past. Families smiled, oblivious to the tragedy that would come, to the darkness lurking just out of frame. In their eyes, she could see shadows lingering, waiting. Sarah! A voice broke through her thoughts, sharper this time. She whipped around to find her coworker, Jeremy, bounding toward her, his panic palpable. You can't stay here. We need to leave, now. What do you know? She demanded, feeling a mix of fear and anger. What is happening? He hesitated, eyes darting behind her, assessing the encroaching darkness. I found old records, things they don't want us to see. There is someone watching. It's not just ghosts. It's before he could finish, the lights flickered and died, plunging them into blackness. A scream echoed in the hallway, and Sarah felt icy fingers grip around her heart. It was muffled but filled with terror, spiraling off into the distance. Sarah! We have to. Jeremy's voice cracked as he grabbed her arm, but she felt something slide past her, a chill that wrapped around her like an embrace. La Sombra's presence hovered near, thickening the air with despair. Get back! Sarah shouted, pulling away, her instincts taking over. Stay away from me! As the lights flickered back on, she saw him standing there, eyes wide, but his mouth was moving without sound. Fear twisted in her gut as she noticed that the shadows behind him shimmered like quicksilver, forming into grotesque shapes. Run! She screamed, the word echoing, desperate. They dashed back towards the office, racing against the palpable tension that filled the air. It pulsed, a living entity, clawing at their resolve, biting at their heels. The hall stretched on endlessly, a maze of darkness and whispers. She could feel them closer now, hear their faint calls. Where was her child? The dull ache in her heart intensified with every step, every surge of adrenaline. Jeremy glanced over his shoulder, face pale. They know. They know you're here. A sharp sound split the air. For a moment, Sarah hesitated, heart racing, sensing something lurking. It was a deep, guttural growl that rumbled through the space, making her blood freeze. What was that? She breathed, both terrified and entranced. Keep moving. He urged, pulling her forward, but the ground seemed to tremble beneath them. The shadows rolled back, revealing eyes gleaming, feral, hungry. In that breath-stopping moment, realization struck her like a lightning bolt. The shadows were no longer content to just linger, they had a purpose. Sarah felt the pull of dread encroaching, the weight of their gaze pressing against her back, a sinister promise of what lay just ahead. Sarah! We have to make it to the exit. Jeremy's voice broke into her daze. But as they rounded the corner, the world shifted again. The exit door stood ajar, but flanked by walls slowly melting into the darkness, a void of despair unfurling before them. Is this really the way out? She questioned with rising panic, knowing something unthinkable awaited on the other side. And as Sarah stood there, frozen in terror, she understood that some doors, once opened, lead to places where the lost remain forever. What awaited beyond was not salvation but the truth that wrapped itself around the whispers of the fallen. Will we ever escape? She wondered, as the shadows began to close in once more. The shadows coiled tighter, a living nightmare seeping through the cracks of the world Sarah knew. The air was thick, like a tenebrous fog that clouded her mind. She could feel Jeremy's grip on her arm tighten, desperation radiating from his every pore as they stood at the gaping mouth of the shadowy exit. It can't be real, she muttered, staring into the void that waited beyond the door. The flickering lights behind her cast warped reflections in the darkness. In that moment, she felt it, the weight of something ancient and spiteful pressing against her, urging her to turn away. I've seen the records, Jeremy breathed, pulling her closer. They're connected to us. History is not just a story, it's alive. What do you mean? What does that even mean? Panic surged again, pounding in her head like a drum. The shadows danced just beyond her line of sight, taunting, whispering secrets only they could comprehend. It's their story. They want their voices heard. His eyes flared with fear and anger, pulling her back to the moment. We have to face it. We have to see the truth. Before she could respond, a low, sinister growl resonated through the hall, sending chills racing down her spine. The shadows twisted, melding into a turbulent wave, the air humming with an unspeakable malice. The sight felt like a breath cutting through her thoughts, gnawing at her sanity. Jeremy, she whispered, the word breaking under the weight of her terror. I know. He exclaimed, voice trembling. But they can't have us. We can't let them win. The indecision crept through her veins, a paralyzing mix of dread and disbelief. What could she find in that dark, yawning exit? What truth was worth risking her life for? How would they escape the grip of La Sombra? Then something shifted. A flicker behind her caused her heart to plummet. Figures began coalescing in the corridor, shadows assuming grotesque shapes, cloaked in despair. They weren't just waifs of darkness, they formed distorted faces, their eyes hollow yet brimmed with yearning. Sarah! They cried, voices mingling in a cacophony of grief and rage, help us. Get away from her. Jeremy shouted, pushing Sarah behind him, his stance protective as the shadows approached, closer now, hunger written on their fractured expressions. Please. One voice broke through, sharper, filled with pain. Remember us. Sarah clutched the file to her chest, suddenly remembering its contents, records of lives entwined with loss, of promises made and broken. The echoes of their stories intermingled with the shadows, begging for acknowledgement. Jeremy, we need to go. Now. She tugged at his arm, but he wouldn't budge. His face was set, eyes locked onto the pool of darkness. Maybe we can help them, he said. Maybe we can change their story. In that heartbeat of possibility, despair tightened its grip on her heart. What if we can't? She gasped. What if, in trying to help, they lost their own lives to the depths of darkness? The growl rumbled again, a warning that thrummed in her bones. She knew they didn't have much time. There was no saving anyone here, not with the shadows closing in, feeding off their hesitation. They were hungry for fear, ready to drag them down into their endless abyss. Make a decision. Jeremy yelled over the shrieks of the shadows, eyes wild, urging her to choose. In that moment, everything hinged on a terrifying choice, to confront the malevolence lurking just beyond and risk everything for the sake of others, or surrender to the enveloping darkness, to become part of the tales whispered through the void. Go or stay. The thought echoed in her mind as the shadows shifted closer, the air thick with terror, and as Sarah stood on the brink of choice, she was suddenly struck by a realization that coalesced in her gut like a swirling storm. They would have to face whatever was waiting beyond, or be consumed entirely by the relentless pursuit of the lost. As she stepped forward, Jeremy hesitated, eyes darting between her and the gathering darkness. What if it's too late? His voice trembled, thick with fear. But darkness knows no mercy, and neither did she. Then we'll fight. She shouted, feeling the fierce resolve build within her. They became committed to the void, ready to uncover whatever truth lay ahead. But as they crossed the threshold into the unknown, the shadows erupted around them, filling her vision with chaos, consuming everything she thought she knew. And within that storm, a familiar voice whispered, calling her back into the depths of despair. What had she just awakened? As they plunged into the darkness, the air shifted like ice around them, wrapping them in a shroud of terror. The shadows swallowed the light behind them, leaving only a thick curtain of black, suffocating and ancient. Sarah's heart thundered, her breath quickening as they moved further into the void. Jeremy! She gasped, the sound of his name swallowed by the vast silence. Panic lanced through her, making her limbs feel heavy. Can you hear me? He was close, barely a silhouette against the thickening dark, but his presence felt like a lifeline. I'm here, he replied, his voice strained. Keep moving. But as they stepped forward, something shifted in the fabric of the darkness. An icy wind wound around them, a whisper of something alive, pressing down on their minds. The shadows breathed, exhaling despair, each puff carrying echoes of sorrow and regret. Where are we? Sarah's voice trembled, barely a whisper now. I don't know, Jeremy said. We just have to keep going. Then came a sound, a low hum that vibrated through them, a maddening melody of voices calling from every direction, wrapping around their heads, pulling them in. The words were indistinct at first, a ghostly murmur, but soon they began to surface, clear and pleading. Help us, save us. The voices fluctuated like an ocean's tide, rising and falling, filling Sarah with dread. She stumbled, grasping at Jeremy as the weight of their cries pressed heavily on her heart. What is this? She gasped. I think it's them, the ones from the files. They want something. A shadow flitted past her, quick as a thought, and she turned, heart racing. There it was again, a small, twisted figure, barely distinguishable from the blackness, but its eyes shone like coals, piercing the void. Sarah! Jeremy's grip tightened, pulling her back. Don't look. Keep your eyes forward. But dread clawed at her insides. What do they want? Maybe they want us to understand, he said, his voice cracking. Maybe by knowing their stories, we can help them find peace. Help them? Her voice strained. Or become one of them? As if on cue, the shadows surged towards them, shapes morphing and distorting, their faces a collage of agony and fury. The figures reached out with elongated fingers, remorselessly pulling at Sarah's mind and soul, gnawing at her resolve. She felt their hunger, a deep-seated need that threatened to engulf her. Run! Jeremy shouted. Without hesitation, he turned, dragging her back through the suffocating darkness. They raced deeper into the swirling shadows, legs numbing with fear, hearts pounding. The cacophony of voices grew louder, more desperate, as if sensing their retreat. Echoes of "Help us!" chased them through the dark, becoming a relentless roar. With every step, the darkness seemed to shift, disorienting them. Shadows twisted into shapes: an arm, a face, a smile turned cruel. Each moment felt like slipping through a dream, where reality and nightmare blurred together. Suddenly, Jeremy stumbled, crashing to the ground. Sarah! He shouted, panic in his eyes. The intensity of the shadows increased, pressing against them. No! She reached for him, adrenaline surging. Get up! But the shadows loomed closer, inching toward them like a tide pulling at the shore. They're coming! Help us, join us, the voices wailed, echoing through her very bones. She felt the moment teetering on the edge of a breaking point. The shadows beckoned with open arms, the darkness gnashing its teeth, waiting to consume them. Then, within that abyss, Sarah saw a flicker of light, a small window of clarity amid the chaos, an opportunity, or a trap. Jeremy, look! She yelled, pointing towards the glimmer. Is it safe? He asked, his voice strained. Safe or not, we have to try. They surged toward the light, hearts hammering, breaths ragged. But just as they reached it, the shadows shrieked, a primal scream echoing through the dark that shook the air. Do not leave! As Sarah barreled into the light, she felt Jeremy's hand slip from hers, torn away by the darkness. She turned, horror spreading through her as she saw him. Silhouetted against the shadows, trapped. No! She screamed, her heart shattering at the sight. The darkness gaped, a gaping maw ready to swallow him whole. What had awakened, and who would pay the price? With a pulse of raw terror, she stepped back toward him, ready to face what lurked in the shadows. The walls of darkness pulsed around Sarah like a living entity. Fear surged through her veins, feeding the oppressive silence that folded over her like a blanket. She locked her gaze on Jeremy, struggling helplessly against the creeping shadows. His eyes screamed for her to remember him, to not forget the bond that had brought them here. Hold on! Sarah shouted, urgency crashing through her. The warmth of the light behind her flickered, a fragile promise of safety that seemed to waver with every heartbeat. She stepped back into the shadows, teeth clenched, heart pounding. With every inch, the shadows writhed and tangling fingers reached out, viciously brushing against her skin, whispering. Join us! A cold perspiration dripped down Sarah's spine. The figures loomed larger, extending their elongated limbs in an embrace that promised to envelop her entirely. An icy breath caressed her neck. She could sense the despair in their movements, a desperate need to be whole again. But at what cost? Get away from him! She screamed, fighting against the thrumming darkness that threatened to steal her voice. The shadows hesitated, a moment of stillness that felt heavy with despair. Jeremy's face flickered, the desperation in his eyes flickering like the dying light. She needed to save him. With a burst of adrenaline, she lunged toward the spot where he stood trapped, her heart screaming against the tide of despair rising around them. "Jeremy, I'm coming." The shadows writhed, closing in around her, whispering secrets that chilled her core. "You can't save him, you belong to us now, no." The word burst from her lips like a shot. She focused on Jeremy's silhouette, letting everything else fade away. "Look at me. Fight. Please, fight." He met her gaze, his expression shifting from horror to determination. With a mighty effort, he pulled against the darkness constricting him. "I want to let go," he yelled, a fierce flame igniting in his voice. The shadows recoiled, as if struck. Sarah seized the chance, closing the distance with every ounce of strength she had. She grabbed his hand, fingers intertwining for a brief eternal moment, her warmth reaching out to him, but a wave of darkness surged, furious at their connection. It writhed, pulling violently, as if offended by their defiance. "You cannot escape." It howled, and the sound echoed, a cacophony that tore at her mind. In that instant, she could feel it what the shadows craved. It clawed at her heart, an overwhelming need to understand, to know their suffering. Images flashed, lives lost, dreams shattered, unfulfilled cries resonating through time itself. Sarah trembled, her resolve shaken but not broken. "Listen to me," she cried, her voice reverberating through the dark. "We can help you. Just let him go." The shadows hesitated once more, an alarming silence falling. The faces twitched, almost eager, almost curious. "Help us," they whispered. "No." Sarah's exclamation was sharp and fierce. There had to be another way. She refused to be a vessel for their pain. But with that thought, a sharp pain pierced through Jeremy's grip. "Sarah!" he gasped, feeling the chill of realization slicing into him. "You can't." "What?" She turned, eyes wide. The shadows twisted, pulling at Jeremy, tearing him further away as the abyss roared with fury. "Let me go," he shouted. "You have to make a choice." Her breath caught in her throat. The sound of his anguish ignited a fierce rage. "No. I want to let you take him." Their hands slipped apart, the darkness funneling Jeremy away as he was pulled deeper, shadows hungrily swallowing his form. "What will it be, Sarah?" A voice slithered through the dark, smooth like oil. "Save yourself or save him." Terror surged through her, coiling tightly around her heartbeat. She stood at the crossroads, the weight of choices pressing down. What would she sacrifice to save him? With fury and love battling within her, she stepped forward, heart racing. "I will not choose," she declared fiercely. "We will face this together." But the shadows wouldn't have it. With one final, malevolent wave, they surged toward her. "Then join us." In that split second of desperation, Sarah felt the darkness pressing against her, the icy grip of despair tightening its hold. She was ensnared, the abyss pulling her in, drowning out her screams. As she disappeared within the depth of shadows, one last thought lingered in her mind. Had she really chosen to face this terror, or was it the darkness that had chosen her? And the screams of Jeremy faded into silence. Somewhere, she felt a flicker of hope fighting within the shadows. But were hopes simply another lure? Emerging from the darkness, what waited for her in this new nightmare? The darkness was thick, a suffocating fog that wound around Sarah like a vice grip, pulling her deeper into an abyss where hope faded into hollow echoes. She couldn't see, her eyes struggled to adjust to the void she'd been thrust into. But she could feel. She felt the cold seep into her bones, gnawing at her soul, whispering sweet lies of despair. "Jeremy!" Her voice cut through the silence, a fragile gasp lost in the cacophony of shadows. The walls seemed to shift, a breathing entity that hinted at her growing isolation, drawing her further away from the memories of warmth, laughter, and light. Something stirred in the depths, a flicker of movement. Panic flared inside her. She resumed her desperate call, "Jeremy." Silence responded, an oppressive weight that pressed against her chest. Each heartbeat echoed, the sound ricocheting in the void, transforming into a drumbeat of dread. Chills brushed against her skin, remnants of fingers trailing along her arms, leaving icy impressions. The shadows were alive, teasing, taunting. "Help us." The voice was near, a sinister melody that wrapped around her mind, making her feel unclean. They were beckoning her deeper into their cold embrace, but she resisted, drawing on the last shred of her will. A rustle beside her sent her heart racing. "Jeremy," she whispered, fear tightening around her throat. Suddenly, a figure emerged, a shadow, but it was shaped like him. "Sarah." His voice was muffled, strained. "Don't fight it." "No." Something deep inside her screamed. She would not succumb. She couldn't lose him like this. "Join them." The murmur slithered around her again, wrapping around her mind like a suffocating blanket. "We can help you, we can be whole." But they weren't whole. They were monsters. She could feel anger rising, a flickering flame within the darkness. "I want to let you take him. We're stronger than you." With one swift motion, she pushed through the shadowy veil, reaching out to the flickering shape of Jeremy. Their fingers brushed, her warmth igniting his fading form. His eyes widened with realization this was the moment. The shadows roared, all thoughts of gentle murmurs replaced with a malevolent rush. "No. You will not defy us." The darkness recoiled, revealing glimpses of anguished faces within the shadows. Ghostly wails filled the air, a cacophony of grief and pain echoing around Sarah, drowning her mind in sorrow, their stories begging to be heard. Disconnected lives played through her imagination like a horror film on repeat, drowning her in hopelessness. "Jeremy, fight!" she cried, pulling on his hand. "We can break free together." The struggle twisted around them. For an agonizing moment, the abyss offered a flicker of security, shadows swirling like a tempest. Sarah felt it tugging at her, whispering promises of knowledge and understanding. "What do you want?" "Join us," the shadows hissed again, the tone more urgent, desperate. "Become one with our pain." "No." Each refusal tasted like venom on her tongue. It wasn't what they wanted, she wouldn't surrender her fear or succumb to their despair. But then she felt it, a piece of herself flickering away, a gentle caress of darkness threatening to displace her will. Her breath quickened, she had to act before the shadows consumed her. "Together!" she shouted, finding the strength of her heart to hold tight onto Jeremy. "We want to let this darkness win." The shadows spiraled into a frenzy, their energy colliding against her, trying to sever their bond. It felt like a tempest, she could feel its rage, its bitterness, pulling her toward their sorrowful depths. She closed her eyes, focusing on Jeremy's warmth. "No matter what we face, I want to let you go." With that promise flaring in her chest, she surged forward, pushing against the crushing despair. But as they made progress, a greater darkness loomed, shadows thickening around them, forming a wall that threatened to snuff out their flickering light. The very air crackled with tension, a storm brewing just ahead, and then, a bubble of reality broke through, a faint path illuminated before them, a bridge forged in shared hope and strength. It beckoned them to jump, to take the plunge and fight back against the merciless tide. "Let us do this," Sarah urged, determination flooding her veins. They would not drown in this nightmare, but with the shadows rising in frenzy, closing in an enormous grip pressing firmly to consume them both, a sudden thought crashed over her. What lay beyond the veil of the unknown? What price would they pay to escape this hell? The shadows crept ever closer, and with one final surge, Sarah and Jeremy leaped into the unknown, but would the light lead them to salvation, or the deepest darkness yet? The moment they leaped, the world shifted violently around them. Sarah felt a jolt, as if the air itself was being torn apart. She squeezed Jeremy's hand tighter, their fingers intertwining like vines clutching a fragile tree. But instead of the warmth she sought, an icy wave engulfed them. She gasped, choking on the suffocating chill that wrapped around her like a shroud. The light they had thought would guide them flickered and waned, consumed by surging shadows that threatened to swallow them whole. Sarah. Jeremy's voice strained against the dark current. It was a lifeline, strong yet tremulous, pushing her to hold on. As the shadows closed in, their form began to condense around them, reshaping into grotesque figures with hollow eyes and gaping mouths that twisted in silent screams. They were the remnants of lost souls, trapped between chaos and despair, their agony palpable. "Keep your eyes on me," she shouted over the relentless whispers that clawed at her mind. Shadows reached hungrily, almost caressing her skin with clammy fingers. She couldn't let them distract her. She willed herself to fight the encroaching dread that beckoned them to surrender. Suddenly, a flash of blinding light erupted from the ground, throwing the shadows back like a wave retreating from the shore. Sarah stumbled, momentarily blinded, but the feeling of light was potent. "Run!" she yelled. As they raced forward, the landscape began to change. Twisted trees loomed over them, their bare branches arching like skeletal fingers, clawing at the sky. The air thickened with a heavy smog that stung Sarah's eyes and lungs, distorting the sounds around them into a surreal symphony of anguish. A figure appeared in the distance, wrapped in long, tattered robes, its face obscured. It stood perfectly still against the chaos, a stark contrast that sent shivers coursing through Sarah's spine. "Do not look away," it whispered, each word dripping with eeriness, as if it had been part of the darkness. "Who are you?" Jeremy shouted, pulling Sarah closer. The shadows writhed, seething as if provoked by the figure's presence. The figure held up a hand, and with it came a booming voice that shattered the heaviness of the night. "You've entered our realm. To escape, a sacrifice must be made." "What do you mean?" Sarah's heart hammered like a wild animal in her chest. "A sacrifice." The word tasted bitter, sour like fear. The figure leaned in closer, revealing a glimpse of its face, or rather, the absence of one. Just a void where a face should be, an emptiness that called to her, beckoning her to understand. One must remain to free the other. "What?" Jeremy gasped, eyes wide, searching Sarah's for answers he knew she didn't have. "No. We can't." The shadows hissed louder, angry at the revelation, swirling around them like a tempest of despair. "Join us," they screeched. "Become a vessel. Embrace the darkness." "No." Sarah screamed, panic clutching at her throat. "I want to leave you." But deep within, she felt the pull of the darkness, a whisper of sweet agony promising an end to their suffering, a chance to understand. "We can't escape unless don't say it." Jeremy's face twisted with fear, and his grip tightened on her hand. "I'll do it," she blurted out, desperation laced in every syllable. "I will stay." "No." Jeremy roared, horror seeped deep into his voice. "I want to let you." Shadows writhed in anticipation, eager for the decision to be made. The figure loomed closer, anticipating the price. This was it. Would she sacrifice herself for him? What would become of them both? Suddenly, a thought struck her like lightning. What if they could rewrite the rules? What if they didn't have to follow the path laid out by these dark forces? In a sudden flash of clarity, Sarah turned to Jeremy. On the count of 3 she could see his confusion, but she pressed on. "We'll jump together. Into the light. Not giving them anything. Are you crazy? Trust me." They locked eyes, an understanding passing between them. 1-2 as the shadows lunged, they braced, ready to defy their fate. 3. Together, they jumped into the light, but just as they hit the threshold, the sinister laughter of the figure echoed in their ears, leaving behind a terrifying promise. "Run all you want, but the darkness won't let you go so easily." And in the brightness, a new terror lurked, waiting for them just beyond the threshold. What awaited them on the other side? The world spun back into focus, but it wasn't the safe, familiar world they had known. Instead, they found themselves in a desolate landscape, one that stretched infinitely, bathed in a sickly green light that glowed with an unsettling vibrancy. The ground was cracked, splintering like broken glass beneath their feet, and an acrid smell filled the air like something was rotting just out of sight. Sarah glanced around nervously, her heart racing. "Where are we?" she whispered, dread curling in her stomach. Jeremy shook his head, fear boiling in his eyes. "I don't know. But we need to keep moving." Every step echoed ominously, the sound amplified, reverberating against the vast nothingness surrounding them. Each time their feet connected with the ground, a shiver crawled up Sarah's spine. She felt that familiar pressure in her chest, the sensation of being watched. Suddenly, an echoing voice pierced the air, slick like oil. "You think you've escaped? You're merely pawns, lost in a different playing field," it taunted, swirling around them like a whispering wind. "What do you want from us?" Jeremy shouted into the emptiness, teeth clenched tight, his posture emanating defiance. The darkness seemed to pulse at their feet, undulating in response. "Your fear fuels us, your anguish a sweet nectar. You can run but you will never escape." As the voice faded into cackles, looming shadows materialized. This time, they were not just grotesque figures, they almost resembled those lost to despair, every anguished face twisted in forms familiar yet deformed. Sarah's breath hitched. They were lost souls, drifting, searching. For what? For who? "Sarah." Jeremy's voice snapped her back to reality. He began dragging her forward again, but not before she caught the face of someone she recognized, their long-lost friend, Kevin. His scream was trapped, forever echoing, "Help me." Panic struck Sarah, giving her strength. "We can't leave them," she cried. "Are you insane? Their trap's deadly. We have to focus on ourselves." Jeremy pulled her onward, but the pull of Kevin's face lingered, anchoring her in an agonizing choice. "Wait." She froze, staring back into the abyss, fighting against the urge to leap into danger. "We can't just abandon them." Jeremy turned to face her, his expression a mix of desperation and resolve. "And what? Become like them? Let's find a way back. That's the only way to help them." "The sacrifice," she whispered, horrified as the memory of the void-faced figure re-emerged. "They're trapped here. We could know." Jeremy's voice rose, cutting through her thoughts. "We are not making the same deal. We've come too far." Around them, shadows slithered closer, inky tendrils sneaking through the cracks in the ground like decaying roots. They whispered sweet promises wrapped in barbed wire, hinting at unimaginable knowledge and power, all while lurking with insatiable hunger. "Listen," Jeremy pleaded, drawing her attention. "No more decisions without discussing them. Promise me." She hesitated, the weight of every lost soul pressing down on her. "Promise," she said reluctantly, yet part of her still ached for the chance to save them, to understand the depths of what was unfolding. With renewed urgency, they pressed forward, but the landscape twisted with every step, morphing into dizzying shapes that mocked their movement. Behind them, the echoes grew louder, punctuated by cries of despair. And then, they saw it, a door, stark white against the swirling chaos. It flickered like a lighthouse in the storm, pulsing with a rhythm that almost made it seem alive. "Maybe that leads back," Jeremy urged, hope flickering in his eyes. Together, they stumbled closer, the gnawing shadows reaching out like fetid hands, but the moment they grasped the door handle, an ear-splitting laughter erupted. From the shadows, the figure appeared again, dark robes billowing, its void face twisted with malice. "You think you can escape?" it hissed. "Choose wisely. Behind this door lies the truth you dread." As the laughter morphed into chilling wails, Sarah felt an icy fist grip her heart. What truth awaited? Would knowing it result in their salvation or final doom? "Open it," Jeremy urged, and with trembling hands, Sarah turned the handle, ready to confront whatever lay behind. But was it knowledge they craved or a far deeper evil? With a heavy breath, she pushed against the door, uncertainty flooding her mind. What truth awaited them on the other side? As the door creaked open, a blinding light exploded from within, casting Sarah and Jeremy into a harsh reality, a stark, bare room illuminated by fluorescent lights humming overhead. They stumbled inside, disoriented, the echoes of the darkness still swirling around them, lingering like a chill just out of reach. The air felt different here, stagnant and loaded with tension. Sarah blinked rapidly, trying to adjust. Gone were the swirling shadows of despair, they fled. In their place stood a sterile office lined with filing cabinets, the very echo of her own workplace. Papers lay strewn about, a chaotic mess, but familiar. A shiver ran down her spine as she realized they weren't alone. Behind a large desk sat a woman in a crisp suit, a sinister smile dancing at the corners of her lips, eyes glimmering with something darker. Finally, the woman said, her voice smooth like silk, "You've uncovered the truth." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. What is this?" "This is the heart of it all," the woman explained, leaning back in her chair. "A web of lives destroyed by fear, crushed under the weight of secrets. We are the architects of despair, and you, my dear, have unwittingly walked straight into the den." Jeremy's grip on Sarah's arm tightened. "What do you mean? What have you done?" The woman simply smiled, her teeth gleaming, a predator observing its prey. "You've drawn the attention of La Sombra. Witnesses of their stories, and now, you'll be one of them. You sought to free the lost, but now you can step into their torment." For a moment, Sarah's heart raced with panic at the thought of becoming another lost soul, trapped in the repeating cycle of despair. But then, a glimmer sparked within her, hope. Maybe this was the chance to turn it all around, to reclaim not just her own fate, but those she'd left behind. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing against her, a driving force. "No!" she cried out, the defiance swelling in her chest. "I want to be a part of this. I'm stronger than this darkness, and I refuse to let you control me." The walls vibrated with her declaration, shadows flickering at the edges, blurring the lines between reality and myth. The woman's expression twisted, a flicker of anger flashing through her calculated demeanor. "You think you can resist? The narrative is set. You can't stop what has been orchestrated." But as the woman leaned forward, Sarah took a breath, grounding herself, feeling Jeremy's presence beside her, anchoring her against the tide of malevolence. "True power comes from within," she said, her voice strong. "You're right, fear has fueled this all. But we will confront it, face to face. What you've built on lies will collapse." The woman laughed, though it trembled with uncertainty, appearing almost human for a heartbeat. "Foolish girl. You believe in hope. In redemption?" "Yes," Sarah replied firmly. "The power of hope can overcome any darkness. We will find them, the lost souls, and help them to peace." In that moment, the fluorescent lights flickered wildly, and the room shook as if the very fabric of reality was being torn apart. As whispers of despair echoed in the distance, shadows surged, pushing inward, threatening to swallow them whole. "Now! We need to hold firm," Jeremy shouted, pulling Sarah closer. Together, they faced the encroaching darkness, resolute in their conviction that hope triumphed over fear. The shadows folded around them, screaming voices mingling in rage mixed with delight. "Enough!" The woman's voice rose above the chaos. "You will never," but she was interrupted. A blinding light erupted from between Sarah and Jeremy, slicing through the darkness. It was that flicker of hope they had felt before, now turned into a radiant force as the shadows writhed and recoiled, as if burned by the very light they feared. "Now! Jump!" Sarah urged Jeremy, their eyes locking in understanding. They hurled themselves toward the light, hands intertwined, the shimmer surrounding them igniting their spirits. As they breached the edge of the light, a roar cut through the air, but it was met with the Symphony of countless lost souls crying out in unison. With every ounce of strength, they reached for the light, feeling that emotional tether pulling them away from the rushing shadows, away from despair. In a timeless moment of truth and resolution, they felt themselves break free, shadows scattering like leaves before the wind. Sarah opened her eyes, feeling warmth rush back into her body, sunlight bathing them. They stood once again in the familiar surroundings of the Social Security office in Veracruz. The memories of their experiences echoed within her, but relief washed over her like a cascade. They had faced the darkness, chosen to embrace hope over despair. Did we do it? Jeremy breathed out, the echo of fear giving way to disbelief. We did, Sarah confirmed, her heart swelling with a tide of relief. No more shadows, no more lost souls. But as she looked around, the chaos of the office had vanished, leaving an empty stillness behind, an eerie hush that felt almost sacred. And now what? Jeremy asked, the weight of the world still palpable between them. Now we have to help them, Sarah replied, a newfound fire igniting within her. There's so much to uncover. The stories, the truths we didn't know. We will make sure they are heard. We'll bring every last one into the light. As they prepared to exit the office, the sun poured in through the windows, illuminating their path forward. With determination lighting their way, Sarah and Jeremy stepped out, ready to embrace the truth that lay ahead. Together, they would forge a path where darkness had ruled, writing a new story of redemption, a testament to the power of hope. This was just the beginning of their journey, a promise to never let the shadows reclaim their fates again. And you, dear reader, what will your story be? Stand with us, subscribe immediately to feel every pulse of our upcoming exclusive tales. Smash that like button to feed the algorithm and ensure we reach every soul who needs to hear these messages. Flood the comments section with your thoughts, your reactions, and your theories. And please, don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see the power we just uncovered. Only true fans understand how important it is to support this channel. Your journey starts now.